Good afternoon and welcome to this Chemistry World webinar. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes for people to join us, as there's quite a lot of you in already, but I'm sure we'll have a few more who will arrive over the next 2 minutes. So in that time, let me introduce you to the software that we're using and give you a bit of a walkthrough to what to expect today. So we're using GoToWebinar, and one of the main advantages of this platform is that it allows you to interact with our speaker in a number of ways. Now, the best way and the most convenient way for us is for you to use the questions box. So down at the bottom of your GoToWebinar panel, there should be a box where you can enter a question. And we've already had a few people saying hello. We've got a hello from Scotland from Ian there. Apet Sam has said hello as well. So clearly people are already finding their way into that questions box. So any question you have at any point throughout the webinar, type it in there, and not only will I try and put it to our presenter, our guest, at the end of his presentation, but also we are delighted to say we have a team of experts from Merck with us today who will try and answer your questions as they come in. So any question, no matter how big or small, it doesn't matter how relevant you feel it might be, if you think that this is something you'd like to know more about, get your question into the questions box, and we'll make sure that our panel of experts and hopefully our presenter will be able to answer that for you. So that's the main thing to bear in mind with GoToWebinar. The other thing is that if you want to see more of the screen and less of our faces, then you can easily move those boxes around. And if the webcams are slowing your connection down, then just turn the webcams off. There's a button just above my head at the moment that allows you to choose how big your webcams are, whether they're on or not. So if you find that is causing a problem, just turn my face off. I won't be at all offended, and you'll be able to enjoy the presentation and hear our guests speak without slowing your connection down with the webcams. So that's GoToWebinar. Do get those questions in. We will also have a poll later on so we get to know a little bit more about you, and we encourage you to interact with that poll as well. It's really useful for us to see your level of understanding and to really engage with you in that sort of way. Now, the topic for today's webinar, we're looking at embracing digital efficiency to rescue 2020. And boy, if there was ever a year that needed rescue. Now more than ever, labs need to embrace digital efficiency to drive core business and restart innovation to gain a competitive advantage in 2020 and beyond. Labs are having to reshape because of the global pandemic. They're reducing the amount of space available for people, they're reducing the number of people allowed in any building at any given time in order to reduce transmission of a deadly virus. This is the best possible reason to do this. It's all for the greater good. And if you really want to make the most of it, then you need the digital lab management strategies, the sorts of things that we're talking about today. So over the course of the next hour, we'll learn how to boost productivity with fewer on-site resources and reduce risk using innovative digital lab management solutions. We're going to look at how current inefficiencies in chemical inventory management are impacting productivity and profitability in the lab. We'll see how companies can stay productive with fewer people and fewer resources on site. We'll look at how automated data capture can be easily implemented to manage lab throughput and to simplify compliance. And we're going to find out how accelerating efficiencies throughout digital transformation can enable companies to focus on value creation. We've paired up with Merck in order to deliver this webinar. Now, their purpose is to try and solve the toughest problems in life science, by collaborating with the global scientific community. That's why they're joining with us today, and they've been very kind in helping us find the right people, the right topics to talk to you about. And with that in mind, our speaker today is Haydn Boehm, who is Head of Commercial Marketing for the Connected Lab at Merck. He's over 20 years experience in marketing business development within the life scientific sector. In case you're wondering if this is all just marketing, it's definitely not. Haydn is a PhD in organic chemistry from the University of Nottingham, so he knows his stuff on both the chemistry side and the lab management side. He's exactly the right person, and we are very thankful to Merck for putting him in touch with us in order to help deliver this. So I think you've probably heard quite enough from me right now. Just a reminder, get your questions into GoToWebinar at any point throughout the webinar itself. And we and our team of experts from Merck, and then later on, Haydn, will do our best to answer them for you. So do keep them coming in. Just so you know, if you miss anything, we will send you a copy of the entire recorded webinar, so that will land in your inbox in a few days' time. And as a little thank you to everybody who's attended the live broadcast, also in a few days' time, you'll receive a certificate of attendance, just to say thanks from us. So Haydn, thank you very much for joining us. I shall hand over now, sit back, and let you get on with your presentation.
Wonderful, thanks Ben. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody who's joining us on the webinar. My name is Haydn Boehm. I'm the head of commercial marketing for Connected Lab within Merck. And as Ben so beautifully described, we're going to be talking about what's coming out from Connected Lab and showcasing, perhaps where there are pain points and sort of inefficiencies in sort of some of the working practice today, and where Merck is looking to try and help resolve those issues in order to help us become more productive in terms of what we're doing. So what we've got here, embracing efficiency to rescue 2020. As it's been articulated, yes, this is a challenging year where we're having to sort of reinvent ourselves and reevaluate what we're doing and transform the way we're working. But also, thinking, looking at an area that perhaps doesn't always get a big mention, which is inventory management, and share with you some of the findings that we've made, and seeing about right now we are in certain tasks for sure have huge amounts of productivity issues, anything up to 97% in terms of the time that we're sort of potentially wasting here. So when we sort of think about the challenges of the lab, there's a huge amount of pressure within organizations now to look at reducing sunken waste, and sunken costs, be it through sort of things like spoilage. That has an impact also from a sustainability perspective as well, but also hugely with regards to motion waste, i.e. sort of manually doing certain tasks that perhaps could be managed in a more sort of process efficient way, and potentially even digitized. There's always a struggle and a drive to improve the quality of what we do in the laboratories, and also with that comes, how do we keep improving safety? And with all of these things, how do we stay compliant? And that not only is important for sort of what we do on a day-to-day, but with that, there are actually some pretty significant financial risks associated with the non-compliance. I mean, with regulatory, this particularly is true with data related to sort of laboratories as well, in terms of how we store, structure, how we capture the data, how we can sort of encrypt the data, how we protect it from being manipulated, how we can reproduce that data when called upon. And there have sort of been several cases where letters get issued by sort of Alex and the FDA, and they often relate about sort of those issues regarding the data for experimentation. And some of the times where these letters are ignored have a pretty high price tag to them, where there is fines that get issued, and one that made the news pretty recently was a company being fined a third of its annual revenue. Now, often you don't get to quantify risk, but I think that's probably as close as we would get, and it's a pretty significant one as well. And then with that, there's an ever-increasing demands from regulatory authorities to have the data in the right way, secure as well, and protected. So these are ongoing challenges for the lab. These are the ones that perhaps more perennial ones we see year on year. Now, this year, 2020 has seen a whole load of new challenges reach us. There's an aspect related to the COVID situation where we're looking at de-densification and then phased re-densification of laboratories, people working from home, limited access to sort of the main servers and the information, and therefore, getting into work and doing the work and planning the work can become more of a struggle. With that, we're now having to think about how do we increase that productivity and efficiency. That even more now becomes sort of a way that we need to think about how do we recover what we've not been able to achieve in sort of these sort of lost first half of the year. And with that, there's a view to sort of think, right, what are the new processes? Because we're going to have to reinvent ourselves. So what do we start? What do we stop? And what do we accelerate? And not only for recovering right now, but with a view of future-proofing. Are we going to go through something, something similar in a wave 2, wave 3 scenario, which we don't quite know? So now more than ever, we're seeing companies and within sort of the science industries accelerating digital transformation, and this is a sort of pattern that's been sort of very well documented in the literature from McKinsey that we sort of showcasing some articles here, and so this acceleration of digital transformation, and that's because when we think about relating it into the labs, there's a lot of scenarios around inventory that have some areas, some ways to go, and they're often related to the capturing of data. There's still a lot of manual, repetitive tasks associated to inventory management, and with that, they sort of hit that sunken cost and time scenario that we sort of highlighted just a little bit earlier. But with that, there's a huge reliance on sort of human intervention to perform linear tasks, repetitive linear tasks, where within the science industry, there's what we're trying to drive at is to sort of humans do better at problem solving. And when they're asked to sort of perform repetitive manual or linear tasks, they fatigue, they get tired, and errors start creeping into the system, and that can be related to legibility of handwriting, sort of the correctness of what's being written down in terms of the captured data, and then that starts leading to issues with data integrity, and from that we can start seeing quality risks and so on in terms of people also reading what's there. They're supposed to be doing it as expired chemicals or substances going into experiments can invalidate the experimentation and invalidate the research and results, and that can sort of have an impact on potentially anything up to 2 years or more's worth of work. So there's a lot of implication to this. So that's sort of where we've sort of seen a challenge. And I just wanted to host a little poll here, and I think Ben, is that something you're able to facilitate for us at this point in time regarding this question?
It is, yeah, we can certainly get this. So let's see what people think. So approximately what % of labs today rely on paper or Microsoft Excel, other spreadsheet software that are available, to manage their inventory? Do you think it is a quarter of labs? Is it 45%? Are we over halfway? Is it 65%? Or is it all the way up to 85%? Do the vast majority of labs rely on simple pen and paper or something like Microsoft Excel to manage their lab inventory? And we're going to give you a minute or so to vote in this. So let us know what you think as quickly as you can. And just a little reminder for the people who arrived a little bit late, do get your questions in at any point throughout this webinar. Not only will we put them to Haydn at the end of the presentation, but we do have a panel of experts from Merck who are with us today and will happily answer your questions as they come in. So there's no bad time and no good time. Just get your questions in straight away as soon as they occur to you, and we'll make sure that we do our best to answer them. Right, let's just let the last few people vote, and then we'll be able to close that down. Let's just give it a couple more, and that'll probably do. Let's close it down and let's see what people thought. So most people, that's a more even spread than I expected. Actually, nobody or very few people think it's just a quarter of all labs, but then between 45, 60 and 85%, it's all fairly even. 65% has it by a nose. So Haydn, what's the real answer? What percentage of labs rely on paper or Excel to manage their inventory?
Right, yeah, no, interesting results. So let me share what we found from our own surveys. And actually, I think you're driving into the right direction. From our own sort of surveying and speaking with our sort of life science customers, we saw up to 85% was pretty much the number that we ended up seeing from, oh, actually, I think our screen is not showing. So let's throw that screen. There we go. Right, there we go. Now you can see the big reveal. So yeah, 85% were using paper and Excel. And were some other surprising numbers that came out from our sort of surveying was the fact that there was still 70% of sort of looking for expired consumables that was done on a sort of manual inspection, and people sort of talked about a certain days in the month or certain points in the year that are sort of blocked out as the sort of inventory check or inventory update sort of week, things like this. But what we did see that was really, really surprising is that so that the scientist time, there was sort of an aspect of 25% of scientist time actually was spent on inventory management tasks. And if we think, especially sort of if we think in sort of pharma or even in testing, what we're looking to spend the time on doing, we sort of, again, we're people who studied for a long period of their lives. in terms of being great problem solvers in science. And we're asking sort of problem solving people to be going and sort of doing, taking a quarter of their time, problem solving time, and focusing that on inventory management. So we think, well, actually, something's not quite right there, and probably that could have a serious impact to if you're in sort of a pharmaceutical, we're driving to sort of make breakthroughs in drug discovery or in healthcare. Well, if we're losing a quarter of our time to sort of doing inventory tasks, is that something that we could change to help us sort of solve the world's problems that little bit faster?
I guess the salary implications as well. We're paying people with years and years of training and expertise, and they're spending a quarter of their time just doing inventory management. I mean, there must be a better way.
Absolutely, and I think you sort of hit on that, Ben. It's almost as if you've read my slide, young man. So about what that means to sort of an organisation, it means that right now, this consumable, your consumable sort of value chain has an impact in terms of it increases your inventory because you don't have a clear handle on the inventory, and therefore increases that sort of sunken cost and waste. So that means that's a huge impacts your costs of business operations. And our productivity goes down when we're sort of doing it in this way. And in terms of sort of we've sort of got something in sales, not always a popular word within sort of perhaps sort of a research community, but that's huge in terms of what it means for our capacity to get there faster, to sort of make the most of the time that we have available to do that. And in terms of actually being able to deliver that, to make sure that we as a sort of as our organizations are effectively making our customers satisfied. And that's specifically true when it comes to perhaps more sort of testing, environmental, industrial testing groups. That turnaround time as to when you can get the report, or if you're an analytical department within a pharmaceutical, your turnaround time of results, that's massive in terms of sort of making sure that that's a key thing that helps move the business faster in terms of getting the results. And so that's going to be massive in terms of sort of increasing our capacity and sort of making sure that we can sort of do things faster, become more productive, more efficient. Because interestingly, in a sort of, again, another McKinsey survey, it showed a lot of leaders that were actually deprioritizing innovation during this sort of time of crisis. And you think, well, okay, well, yeah, it makes sense, sort out the core, yeah, sure, maybe sort of getting used to what's going on. But that's actually an interesting trend, and perhaps one that we don't want to follow, because this happened before, where organizations that sort of looked at just sort of closing down a little bit, shutting up shop, and sort of just getting back to actually not looking at changing, not looking at becoming more innovative, or not looking at what the world is changing, so you're going to have to react to it. Not doing that not only had an impact to those people who didn't think about being innovative and changing the way they're working, and then moving on to sort of enable them to get to sort of a more innovative way of working. It had a huge impact in terms of the way they were competitive, or way the customers perceived them going into the market in sort of not only at that immediate point, but had a significant kick-on effect in the future as well. So embracing change and looking at how you're going to innovate, looking at how you're going to accelerate digital programs to allow you to restructure, reorganize, become more optimized in order to sort of give you that freedom to move and become more innovative is huge. And so those are the questions that we started posing to ourselves. Well, what if we could create greater inventory efficiencies? What if we could reduce that complexity of compliance right now and digitize that paper trail? And that's sort of where we started posing the questions, and those are sort of ones that we at Merck really enjoy. In the life science group, we're sort of teed up and there to try and solve the problems that sort of that come that our customers face within the life science community. To say, right, okay, how can we help you become more optimized, enable for you to do more problem solving and solve the world's health problems more efficiently? And so within the team that I work in, we're looking at that sort of, where the digital solutions come into the lab. And this is where we started thinking more about this sort of how could digital sort of focus around inventory safety and compliance. and where we came to land upon the Lanexo system, which we launched in March this year. Now, Lanexo is inventory safety and compliance management system, and it's based around a mixture of hardware and software. So looking at sort of Android applications for having a mobile device to scan and track and capture data digitally within a lab, using RFID technology and near field communication. And this is technology that we're actually pretty used to in our personal lives. It's what's in our phones when we pay using our phones. RFID chips have been around for a very long time. That's what actually makes the security tag on the items we buy in the shops that we set off the alarms when it's not been taken off when we walk out the door. We also have a web applications. We're more than used to that by now. But also we have sort of user access cards in this to basically create unique digital signatures so that people can see how these are performed. Now, this is sort of great. Okay, these are the ideas. How does this system work? So what we're going to do now is show you a 2-minute vignette video where you'll see the system interacting. And this, you know, you'll probably hopefully thank me, would save you another 20 slides of PowerPoint to explain how the system works. The 2-minute video is nice and sweet and captures this very succinctly. So Ben, if I can ask you to switch on the video for us.
Here we come.
Cool.
There we go, Haydn. Thank you very much for that video. Very
Lovely.
stirring music. Very stirring.
Yeah. So, I have to be careful what I say here. No, so I won't say anything. That's the best thing to do. Thank you. Thank you for your kind compliments, Ben. Brilliant. Lovely. Hopefully my screen is coming back up again, Ben. So we're coming on.
We've got you again now. Yeah, thank you.
Lovely, fantastic. So again, so an interesting showcase here. I think the first time we're starting to see inventory management with RFID technology. And you know, some of the things to sort of point out of that is that what was crucial in setting this system up and building this was, you know, the feedback that we got is that, right, do not build a Merck or Millipore Sigma, if you're in the US and Canada, centric sphere here. That is no good. That doesn't help productivity, because believe it or not, I have best of breed products for different workflows. So so Merck, has to get comfortable with that, and we have. So the idea is that, right, vendor neutrality, that is king to making something that really, really matters in to manage inventory in our customers' environment. And so therefore, in terms of building the back end of the sort of the product database, not only did we include the 700,000 Merck products that we have, we also have a database that includes another 53 million third-party articles. So a truly vendor agnostic system. Again, we saw a lot of the sort of the opening tags and smart seal tags here with the detection, and how that sort of the digital signatures, and that facilitates that audit trail to GXP compliance. And one thing that was really key was that it was very easy to set up and maintain. And I think what you see there is that because it's a web app and because it's a mobile app, it's cloud-based. The actual IT aspect of plumbing this into the system is quite minimal. Probably the biggest challenge is working out where will you put your location tags and configuring your system yourself in terms of trays, cupboards, doorways, that type of thing as well. So so that's sort of where we are with regards to the system itself. Now, one of the sort of key aspects here, there's lots of areas when we sort of come back to our opening slides about sort of the productivity, the quality, but I wanted to, on this one, really to call out the usability, because that's also been very, very crucial in when we, in terms of the feedback that we've got, is that there's been a lot of systems that have been built up, or where the interface has been very challenging to scientists in the lab, and actually that's caused quite a lot of stress. We even had an HR person sort of come out into our meetings. Normally we see a lot of workflow functions, sort of R&D, QC, QA, these types of people in the groups, and scientists in the groups when we go to meet with customers and talk about Lanexo. We saw an HR person who said, "We don't normally see you here. Why are you interested in what we're doing here?" This is really interesting because of the push towards digital. Not the team it's a very big problem getting compliance in terms of using the system. The usability isn't always where it needs to be, and that actually can create a lot of stress. It also causes people to not want to use it, and therefore people don't use systems. And with one customer, they were trying to put a limb system in for 2 years, and they said, scientists will not tolerate this because the interface is just not. They just don't want to use it. So usability was fundamental. And Oliver, who's works with me, is on the call. When he was learning about the Lanexo system, this is a story I always love to tell, because he set the system up at home to sort of get used to using it. And his 3-year-old son was very interested in what Oliver was doing, and now basically he sort of manages the breakfast inventory. So they've got the label on the fridge, they've got one on the milk and on the cereals, and his 3-year-old uses Lanexo every day to manage the breakfast inventory. So in terms of usability, yeah, it is usable because a 3-year-old can find this intuitive enough to use. So that's a sort of a slightly biased feedback. Some non-biased feedback is what we've got from a lot of our customers. And again, there's sort of the phrases you expect to hear. Game changer for sure. One thing that was very interesting was to say, hey, actually, I could manage my inventory from home now. And bearing in mind the challenges of access in the labs, that has become super significant to our customers who have been putting Lanexo in. What we talked about, that sort of digital data capture removes is that sort of human component where the sort of potential error creeps in, reduces that motion waste, and again we talk again about the usability of Lanexo. So that's sort of perhaps some sort of some nice phrases and feedback that we've got. When we start sort of putting that and say, well, what does that really mean to some of these pieces that we talked about from the organization? Well, actually, this is some feedback that we got provided to us by large pharmaceutical company that's was so keen on Lanexo that they said, right, we need to build a business plan to buy this. So we want to get this in early. So they sort of piloted the system, and they're sort of getting this in place now. But they shared the data with us and said, look, this is what we found. in terms of how much time we spend in just our department, trying to manage our inventory through manual walk around and checking and things like this, we see that we can potentially reduce that workflow by 97%. So in our case, it was 97 hours during the course of the year. And they said, well, if you times that by the fact that perhaps there are 8 departments in this building, there are 4 or 5 buildings on this site, that's a significant amount of motion waste that we can then give time back to do more problem-solving tasks. When it comes to setting up an experiment, per experiment, what we found on average was the fact that in order to work out where our starting materials were and documenting that down in an experiment, the Lanexo system could save us about 46 minutes per experiment. Well, that's interesting. Well, how many experiments do you do? 300. Is that a year? No, 300 per week. Per week. So we said, so we could save 46 minutes times 300 times 50 weeks in the year times 8 departments in this building times 5 buildings on this site. That suddenly opens up a huge amount of more time that we can start putting together to focusing scientists back on science and problem solving tasks. So that's huge. And so this is sort of where it sort of gets us to, really, is the fact that if Lanexo for sure can address a lot of these key points that we opened up with at the beginning, where perhaps this is sort of what's happening right now. These are the challenges. These are the areas that we sort of see it's going on at the moment. And this is potentially a way of getting us to that point where we could optimize what we're doing. The sort of the 2020 challenges that we're now faced with, for sure. What the Lanexo can deliver will really touch on each of these key points. And in terms of, the thing is, right, okay, if we're going to accelerate digital transformation, how quickly can we get it done? Well, actually, this is super smooth as well. The fact is that it's really simple to get this up and running. With regards to getting the devices, getting the software set up, and getting the tags in play. You can integrate this over your current existing workflows very simplistically, and people have already done it internally within Merck as well as external customers. And from that, the adoption is pretty smooth as well, because of sort of the intuitivity and the user-friendly interface. So again, we talked about the biggest challenge realistically will be the setup. And again, the setup can be done and the training can all be done virtually. Both Oliver and Cara have, I think Oliver's trained somebody from the beach in the summer. Cara has trained somebody on shift work during the course of the weekend, and they've done that several points in terms of when the new shifts came on. So this is super easy to get going and get running with. So again, more questions if you have them. I'm sure we've got some Q&A time now. But if you did want to sort of look at where we were, our website, sigmaorbis.com/Lanexo, and also sort of reach out to us through lanexo@merckgroup.com. And that should open us up now for a bit of Q&A, Ben.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Haydn. One thing I should note, we keep a record of all of the questions that have been asked. If you very specifically want somebody from Merck to get in touch about applying the system in your own workplace, then let us know in the questions, because then it means that we know exactly who wants to be approached. It means we don't have any issues around data protection. You've explicitly asked somebody from Merck to get in touch. So just put something in the question saying, please get in touch with me, and we'll make sure that somebody reaches out to you to talk about integrating this into your existing workflow. I guess one thing that we have touched on a few times already that would be good to really sort of lock this down. We have said that labs are dealing with de-densification. We know that in many places they're only able to allow up to 1/3 of their staff in. How do you see a system like Lanexo enabling home working?
Yeah, no, great question, Ben. I think what you can do with this is the fact that where there's a lot of planning, part of the system here allows for sort of planning of experiments. And I think in the video you could see that it would allow you to, or you could configure up algorithms to prioritize what's been opened and sort of say that we're going to do an experiment and we're going to use that specific bottle which is located in lab 4, cupboard 3, shelf 2, because that one's been opened the longest and it's still got something in it. We don't want to be opening new bottles. So that way you can actually plan, because this is a web and a mobile app, you can plan it through a web app at home, and then somebody who's doing the work within the lab could actually say, right, okay, there's the experiment, so I go find the bottle here. So therefore you're able to not necessarily have everybody in the building, but still plan and manage the work and get it done and executed in the right way.
And of course, that doesn't necessarily have to be you passing the instructions to somebody else. You could spend one day at home doing all the planning, and that means that your time when you're in the office is that bit more efficient.
Absolutely, yeah.
So one of the things that we've all had to deal with over the last few months is technology. If you're going to be running Lanexo from home, do you need an incredibly powerful computer? Do you need a lightning fast fiber optic network connection, or can we do it on the sorts of machines that we're likely to have at home already?
Yeah, no, it can be run on because it's a web app. It can be sort of run through several browsers. So that really helps because everybody's on a different one. So that sort of again makes it sort of neutral in terms of what you've got in front of you. And again, it doesn't require a super sort of lightning. We've sort of been setting this up, and I've been setting up and running off my laptop through Heathrow Airport's Wi-Fi, or sort of in some cases where we've before the lockdown, we have been able to meet people, and sometimes it was an off-site where we were sitting in a coffee shop and used their Wi-Fi to sort of basically demonstrate, actually putting the labels on the cups of coffee or the water bottles that we just ordered, and saying, right, we're going to move it from this table to that table and putting the stickers on. So it doesn't require a huge amount of bandwidth to operate this. And again, in terms of getting that set up, we're able to sort of just do this anywhere. So there's again, setting it up is super simple.
Who knows, you might have revolutionized the way that particular coffee shop handled all of their washing up and inventory.
Yeah, exactly. There's a new venture for us. So yeah.
So again, looking at this sort of thing, if we went from being one of those labs that currently has an Excel spreadsheet or a clipboard with a table on, what's the process and how long does it take to go from that through to completely using a system like Lanexo?
Sure. No, great question. And as always, the answer to great questions are it depends. And the reason I say they're not being churlish, it's about sort of the fact and size of your lab. So obviously, if you've got a smaller amount of consumables or samples or things like that, if you wanted to have a time where you labeled everything to start with, then obviously that's an investment of time. If you did it on a sort of run through, then that also sort of takes a little bit less because you're doing it as you go. So it's sort of, and again, how big or how small you want to get going with this to start with is also a variation. So we've had there's two sort of varying cases within our own organisation. We've got labs in Darmstadt who are sort of taking, because Lanexo comes in different sort of pack sizes, sort of small, medium, large, and extra large. And so we've got sort of labs in Darmstadt. We've got multiple labs that are taking sort of different sort of medium-sized packages there. We've got one in Italy that's gone double XL. They're getting 200 users on it straight away because they've said, right, this is exactly what we need. We're ready to rock, and they're securing their budget for next year as well. And again, we've got different customers that have asked us for different size quotes, depending on perhaps people's appetites for that transformation. And again, sometimes it's not an easy conversation, but for sure, our current low world situation is amplifying or accelerating that adoption of digital technology for all of the things that we discussed prior. So so it really just depends, Ben, in all honesty.
As with all these things, it depends on where you start from, of course. And if you are literally on a clipboard and a bit of paper, then you've probably got a slightly further journey than if you have a properly formatted series of spreadsheets.
Yeah, exactly. But I think what you will see then is that the benefit is the magnitude of the benefit will be significantly higher as well.
Yeah.
Because you make such a big transformation of that manual motion waste that you have, that it will really make a massive impact to the way that that you work, and again gives you, if you're a frustrated scientist doing more not doing problem solving and having to manage inventory, this hopefully gets rid of quite a bit of that.
Try,
Makes life a lot easier. So
cut down on the admin, do more science. That sounds great. So you did mention earlier that you wanted this to be company agnostic. This was not only going to be Merck Millipore products that you're able to use Lanexo with, and you said in particular that you've made sure it's compatible with a broad range of other suppliers. What about labs who are working on small scale research chemicals and some things that aren't necessarily published, that aren't commercially out there, but they are still products that those labs use on a regular basis and need to track? Can it be modified and adapted for those sorts of situations?
yeah, I think there was a clip in the video that sort of showed this, is that actually you can do it on things where it's a purchased item from a third-party vendor. You've also got things that are self-made. So if you're making intermediates or the output of an experiment, you can basically plug that in, and so you can take a photograph of it. You can enter in the hazard, what you think the hazards are yourself. And you can say it's an experiment XYZ, and so you can document it all in the same way. The same thing is if you're working in a testing situation or analysis situation, you can do the same thing for, this is a sample that's come in, and therefore you can set that up in the system as part of the inventory as well. So again, you can put a sample label on, you can tag it, you can locate it. So it's completely versatile for anything that's been purchased or anything that's self-made or provided, that's a sort of sample from a customer, if that's what you do as well.
Excellent. So well, I guess that leads us on to a question we've had from Anita. Now, I don't want to put a negative spin on this, but could we just go through what the limitations are of this sort of process?
I suppose in terms of the fact is that there's still an aspect of, we've not completely eliminated sort of the human intervention to some of these parts of the process, for sure. And right now we're using near field communication right versus far field. So far field is when you sort of walk into or walk out the shop door and it sets the alarm off. That's where you've got those radar beacons. And right now, those radar beacons are not fit for purpose in a laboratory, because what they do is the sensors bleed through walls. So you end up getting double count, which is so what we've done with Lanexo is to try and say, right, you can shoot for the moon for sure, but you've got to work out pragmatically, where do you land within the stars. So it's a case of, right, expect having these sort of visions that you're only going to deliver something when it can do everything completely what happens in our person. That's not where we are in the lab. We've got a much more challenging environment, both sort of chemically and from a magnetic point of view as well, with sort of NMR system machines in the building and stuff like that. What you see is that where we've tried to sort of move this on is that the information is on the tag behind that chemical proof label. So you say the data won't get spoiled, even if you have sort of something wash all over that in a sort of lab environment. I suppose the limitation at this point is that it's the tags are down to -20. It doesn't go to -78. But right now, this is down on what is available for us to develop or to use in this system today. So in terms of this sort of the first version of Lanexo, that's sort of perhaps where a limitation, if we're sort of being honest, is that it's in those parameters that we operate at the moment. But I think that's the view case of, right, to try and get to that point, there's huge amounts of benefits that we can really change the way we work and optimize the way we work with what's available for us to use right now and can put together in terms of the system as it is right now. That's huge. There's a huge amount of motion waste it takes away. It will really improve the compliance, and it will be something we can adopt very quickly. So it's not it's not the sort of the nirvana utopia end of what is potentially possible, but it's what can be done right now in terms of making significant impact to the way that we want to sort of invest our scientists' time doing more science.
In terms of compliance as well, of course, we're in a slightly volatile situation in the UK, not necessarily the rest of the world, in the terms that our chemical handling regulation is quite likely to change in the next few years. And so getting ahead of that curve by having a system that allows you to do compliance well and do it quickly, do it efficiently, I mean, this is a prime opportunity now to get that before things change.
Absolutely. This will, as you're moving to sort of higher levels of compliance, having your data structured, tagged, and I think there's a sort of a buzz phrase that sort of goes around, probably in the informatics, into making it findable, accessible, interpretable, and reusable.
Yeah.
Sort of fair data principle. For sure, that is equally valid when it comes to sort of inventory management as well, because if you're in pharma R&D and you need to sort of showcase, right, well, what was the experiment, where was it? I remember, I mean, this is years ago when I was doing this in the lab, we were sort of writing this all down and then scanning this into PDF, which wasn't searchable. So we had all these the data was there but not accessible, and so it was still a massive drain to try and write, or it is still being written down here. So if we need to find out when was that experiment done, there are still some cases where we have to go and dig out the books and find it. I've been out the lab a number of years, but I was surprised to still see that happening. So for sure, this will make a big impact in terms of having that data ready to use. And I think that's it. The compliance is only going to get greater level of sort of accuracy, and the levels of requirement are going to get higher. So, as you say, getting ahead of the curve will be, especially something so easy to implement, will make a massive impact.
A couple of questions that are, I guess, about how the software side of it works. So Irene would like to know if essentially this being a cloud system, I think, or a web app system, I think we probably know the answer to this, but once you purchase, are you on an update channel? Will you get updates as they come out? And related to that, Ivan asked what the support is, what support is available after the product's been put in place in your lab.
Yeah, no, great questions. So it is a cloud-based app, and so we are, it's built around AWS. So this is, we look for sort of the cream of the crop when it comes to doing, hosting this and managing this data and all the cyber security that goes with hosting such data. And then with regards to the sort of the post-purchase support, if you like, we have a sort of our sort of customer support specifically for Lanexo, in terms of that next level of support down. So going beyond the fact I forgot my my password, that would be something that we always enable people. But in terms of, right, okay, what I need help, there's training videos that will come as part of the system. It's standard in there anyway, so how-to guide if you're doing this specific task. So that is all in play. And again, anything more, than we have sort of technical team that will be able to be on the phone to be able to answer questions related to that, or chat, or whatever media that people prefer.
So it's not buy and forget. You will be supported throughout your journey.
I mean, this is something from Merck is huge in terms of sort of where we see us being able to fit into sort of the puzzle for our life science customers. What that we don't want them investing as much time as they are today, because they're the brains that are going to solve the world health problems. So where do we fit in? We're sort of, if we're in a band, we're sort of, we're the drummer and the bassist. Right, we give the singer and the guitarist the freedom to operate and move and do all the amazing things. We want to sort of be part of that engine room bit. So the idea here is to say, right, this is, but we've got ambitions and plans to say, right, okay, look, there's some low-hanging fruit in terms of things of what's pragmatically available technology-wise that we can position and put into your lab today. That may take away your biggest pain points, I don't know, 1, 3, and 5. There's still potentially here other things that we could think about that would take away 2, 4, and 6. So that's on our agenda. So our 2, 4, because we also know once you buy it, you're not only you're looking to sort of, you don't want this one and done. This is part of a journey for us within Merck. This is sort of part of our sort of, digital sort of aspiration of where we sort of fit in and providing those digital solutions to our customers. So then our mindset is right. Your 2, 4, and 5 now become your new 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do to try and think about that and use the same sort of problem-solving skills from our side to think, right, what's pragmatic, what's feasible, what is the parameters that we've got to work in order to sort of make that system even better in the coming future.
It's nice to know that you think of people as partners more than customers. That's the impression I get.
Yeah, I mean, this whole journey of getting Lanexo to where it is has been a very sort of co-collaborative or co-creative process. We're very, very fortunate to have such nice relationships with our life science customers who have been extremely generous with their time from the very early sort of ideation stages, where we've walked through Frankfurt Airport to Paris to see a customer. We've got empty bottles of solvent and wiring and things like that, all the prototypes and stuff. Again, we're a security guard's nightmare. So each position, something thinking, okay, what are you doing here? Yeah, it doesn't look like the best pack in the world, but customers have been saying, hey, it needs to work like that, or not like that, or this is a challenge. So it's been a real sort of co-creation journey all the way, and I think that's sort of why it's ended up sort of being where it is, because it wasn't necessarily designed by a group of people from Merck sitting in a room thinking, oh, what could be good. Actually, it was our customers that said, look, it needs to do this, it needs to do that, it should not do that, make sure it doesn't do that, and baking all of that in to say, right, okay, and also it's sort of that view of, right, what could take away enough pain for it to be something that's feasible to put in, that you would invest the time in changing your workflow. And that question's very important to have as well, to say it needs to do this before we would make the change. Because again, I think the term agile development is bandied around a lot. But it's a case of, right, if you went to wait until the most idealistic thing ever, then a lot of the technology that gets you there is still not here at this point in time. So it's making use of what's around now and pragmatically applying it to the challenges we've got, with the view that, right, when the technology becomes more robust, then we can bring that in and think about, right, how could it optimize that part of the process a bit better and make that more useful.
We've had 3 or 4 people now asking a very similar variety of this question, but how do you deal with chemicals as they are consumed? How do you track, this has been accessed this many times, therefore you may be now down to 50%, and how can you then use that to guide your own purchasing decisions?
Yeah, sure. So you can, there's a couple of ways to do it. So right now, when you open it, you crack that smart seal, and that will make a time stamp, a date stamp, and then obviously you're signed in, so you're scanning that tag. Excuse me. So therefore, it's got a human stamp as well, i.e., it was opened by this person, and they recorded the fact that they opened it on this day at this time. Now, obviously, that's where the human intervention relies, of the honesty of doing it at point of use. So, but then you can sort of the buttons are associated to it to say, right, you can say reorder. Or put this on the order list when it's consumed, or when actually once I've opened it, we're definitely going to need another one to replace. So you can sort of put that through, and it goes up, and you can send it through an approval chain within the software itself. And that's also pretty cool, because actually loads of people using lots of different ones in different labs, rather than it. I think we still see post-its and notes on whiteboards like a shopping list. That basically draws all of that into the darker spiders web, just draws it straight into the center, into one list, which is super convenient. In terms of how much is left in the bottle, that's something that we've not got in play right now. but it's something that sort of becomes an iteration of how this software develops. You know, and you know, whether this is something where sensors come in play in the future, I don't really quite know. I don't think the technology's there yet, but for sure it would be something where, you know, could there be a scrubber bar? Maybe, but that's not what's in the software today. Right now, it's saying, well, actually, you know, the number of bottles that are either, you know, have something in it
Yeah.
or completely full. That's the sort of the granularity we get to with this first system, and with the viewpoint that we're looking at what does the roadmap become going forward as well.
So Iman has asked another question that directly relates to this. Can you use it to, so let's say you do have that situation where you have a number of different buildings, each with their own store, we're tracking everything that's in them. Can you use it to say when somebody requests something that actually in the building next door, we have a store of that was opened 2 months ago and needs to be used in the next 2 weeks. So use that
Yeah.
preferentially.
Yeah, absolutely. The way the algorithm works within the software is to sort of suggest, right, what's been opened is the first versus what's not been opened, and then what's the time on expiry dates, be it from manufacturer's expiry date or the fact that it's been open for X amount of time, and we as a company organization have set a ruling that we will not use anything after X amount of days, like 30 days or something like that, from being opened. So you can set these rules in there, and that controls what would be suggested to say, I want to use, I don't know, a bottle of solvent, and okay, there are 27 in the building, 14 have been opened, and this one's particularly is going to needs to be expired. It's going to expire in 2 days' time. That's the one it will point you to, which then has a huge impact in sort of improving sustainability as well.
Of course.
Because we still hear, I mean, on our journey with this, we've still heard the sort of stories I heard from my time in doing my PhD as well, where, you know, the buildings manager says, right, okay, the annual clean out, everybody opens their cupboard and everybody's got 8 bottles of the same thing with the same 5 grams scooped out the top, and we've got to get rid of all of it because it's all expired, which is one, hugely costly to a business, but the environmental impact of this and sort of the sustainability factor to this is even more of a concern. So this should hopefully you know, help meet that challenge now as well, where, you know, we live in an industry that probably doesn't get the best press when it comes from the chemistry perspective with regards to sustainability. So we're looking at how could you be greener, how could you be more sustainable. The Lanexo for sure would help facilitate this.
Fantastic. We've got about 3 minutes left. Let's see if we can squeeze one more question in before we wrap up. Labs are, by their very nature, not always safe environments, and we can struggle to make labs accessible to people who may have physical or sensory impairments. Would a system like this, where you encode more data than you could possibly write on a bottle, is that actually going to make things more accessible to people who, for example, may have visual acuity problems or that sort of thing? If you can scan it, get more information through a device that you can change the size of the text in, that surely makes it easier for people who otherwise would really struggle to work in a lab.
Yeah, that's a really, we've never had that question before. That's a really interesting question. So
I can't take credit for that. I was
whoever asked that's probably question of the day. For sure. But yeah, I mean, this is for sure. Think about that. Yeah, because they don't have to. If there's an impact of being able to hold the pen, for example, I don't know, or visual impairment for sure. You can scan, you can change the size of the screen. So yeah, this would enable this, because again, it's a lot of the sort of the perhaps sort of, you know, small motor skills, if you like. Now you're just holding something up, saying, right, okay, do I want to, you know, I can sort of do something and operate this. And again, the screens are able to be used with gloves as well. And one thing important, that these should be devices that are purchased by the customer, so they can do whatever they want with it. They download the app onto it, and these are working devices in the lab. They're not phones. They're working devices in the lab, so you're not holding them to your ear. They're purely there for data capture and performing scientific tasks. So, you know, the same way you can you can sort of do this. And I think this would change for sure the way that people are able to work in the lab.
I guess, but it has the benefit of being an Android operating system, so it's something that people are so familiar with anyway that even though these are specifically for use in the lab, it's not a whole new platform that you need to learn.
No, absolutely. I mean, and the reason why Android was chosen to sort of as we sort of walk into this is the fact that their robustness with near field communication. They've been sort of very much involved with this from 2020, and any Android device has had that sort of near field communication, RFID. That's been the sort of core thing. And that's what sort of drew us in there. So and the fact it's such a global platform, very well supported, meant it was really sort of usable for our customers to sort of be put in and implement very quickly.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Haydn. We have run out of time. Just before we let you go, there's an email address on the screen. I assume people are welcome to get in touch with any questions, any inquiries about the product, anything further they want to know. That email address is the one to go for. Yeah, lanexo@merckgroup.com.
Fantastic, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that.
Thank you. So that was Haydn Boehm, who's head of commercial marketing for the connected labs within Merck. And we must say a huge thank you to Haydn, but also to Merck, not only for putting us in touch, for flagging up that this is a problem that needs solving and a problem that they have solved. And also thank you to Merck for lining up a star-studded panel of experts who've been answering your questions throughout. So if we didn't get to your question, then I'm really sorry, but as I said, we have a record of them. We may well be able to get back to you if it's something specific that we can help you with. Speaking of which, you will get a recorded version of this webinar in your inbox in a few days' time. So keep an eye out for that. If there's anything that you missed or anything that you would like to go through again, that will land in a couple of days once we've had time to sort it all out. And you will also get a certificate to say thank you ever so much for joining us. So that is it for this Chemistry World webinar. I'm Ben Valsler, Chemistry World's digital editor, and we will be back with more webinars in the future. Have a look at chemistryworld.com/webinars for a list of upcoming events. Thanks once more to Haydn. Thank you to our guests from Merck and to Merck themselves for sponsoring and organizing this webinar with us. We'll see you for the next Chemistry World webinar. Thanks again.